Hello, and thanks for taking some time out of your day to join our webinar from Real Story Group. This is Scott Dill. I'm on the business development team here with RSG, and my colleague Jarrod Gingras is on the line with us as well. And Jarrod's going to be taking us through the majority of today's presentation, which will be focused on selecting the right dam to power your omnichannel ambitions. I'm going to get you started with a couple of quick housekeeping items of note and take you through the first couple of slides of today's session. So first, I just want to thank everyone again for taking some time. If you have some questions, you can enter those into the questions tab in the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll either get to those at the end of today's session, or if we don't, if we do run out of time, then we'll be sure to follow up with you after the meeting today. Also, you will be able to access these slides within the next couple of days, so keep an eye out in your email from our marketing team with those. And then to our subscribers on the line, you'll be able to access a recording of today's session in your subscriber library. So keep an eye out for that when that comes available. Just to give you a little bit of background about Real Story Group and the way that we can engage with you, because I do see a number of new folks on the line with us today. So we really have three options that we offer as a way of working together. First and most, I guess I would say the simplest form is through our vendor selection subscriptions, where you subscribe to one or potentially multiple research areas, and you access our evaluations in that space, along with potentially some advisory time with Jarrod and the rest of our analyst team. If you're looking to select, say for example, a DAM technology vendor, you can subscribe to that research, and we can help you through that process. Secondly, we have our Omnichannel Stack Advisory Package. In this case, you'd have access to all of our research along with a bucket of advisory hours, where you're taking a little bit more of a holistic view of your MarTech or omnichannel tech stack, and are looking for some guidance on whether it's trends or walking you through the process of potentially going through one vendor evaluation or multiple vendor evaluations at the same time. You can leverage our Stack Advisory Package. A number of folks that are part of that Stack Advisory Package also participate in our Stack Leadership Council, which happens to be meeting tomorrow. We meet 4 to 5 times per year, and typically we center it around a particular topic that's relevant to all of our Leadership Council members. So tomorrow we'll be talking about marketing attribution, but in the past we've touched on areas such as customer data, platforms, and personalization strategies. So if these are some areas that are of interest to you, please reach out to us after today's session. Happy to share more info about the different packages that we offer. Also wanted to mention a little bit more about RSG's, the way we approach working with vendors, in that we don't work with vendors in any way, okay? So what's different about us versus other analyst firms that you may be familiar with is the fact that we never work for advise vendors in any way. We sit on your side of the table as a technology user and buyer. So we don't speak at their conferences or write white papers for them. Our goal is to share with you what these vendors do well in these different technology areas, but also what they don't do so well, where they could fall short for you. And we've heard that we're the toughest critics in this particular space, and it's a reputation that we're actually pretty proud of. It means we're doing our jobs appropriately. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Jarrod, who is the co-author of the book you see here, The Right Way to Select Technology, with our founder, Tony Byrne. And he's going to take you through today's presentation on selecting the right dam for your omnichannel ambitions. Jarrod?
Great. Thank you, Scott. And thank you, everyone, for taking a few minutes. As always, we definitely appreciate it. And all of you, all of our subscribers that are on the line, you allow us to do this kind of work, this hard-hitting analysis that Scott described. And that brings me to the topic of today, and that's selecting the right dam to fuel your omnichannel ambitions. Now, I don't know if it's the hottest buzzword of 2021. At this time of year, you start to hear those polls from all these different organizations, like what words are the most popular. And in this year, it's probably vaccine or something like that. But if you're a MarTech person, omnichannel over the last few years has been one of those most popular terms. And it's not a new term. We've been talking about omnichannel for, gosh, 20 plus years now. But I think where we sit here in late 2021 and over the last year or so, I feel like vendors' omnichannel capabilities have kind of caught up with buyers' ambitions and vice versa. And so most, if not all, of the organizations that we're working with are getting very serious, if not trying to achieve omnichannel, but at least having omnichannel as a goal in order to, in the meantime, get to doing multi-channel really, really well. And what I mean by omnichannel, just to level set a little bit here, is being able to deliver consistent engagement, through our building blocks, through our data, through our content, through our experiences, to the right individuals at the right time, regardless of platform or channel or touch point, if you will. And so that's all well and good. That's if we all want to kind of put that as a way post or a goal post that we're marching towards. I think if you think about it, just how we build experiences, it's pretty simple. I mentioned the concept of building blocks. Sometimes I like to talk about, this at this most fundamental level. So content, data, rules, planning, analytics, those are the tools marketers have to create experiences, right? And to make sense of these experiences as well. And that's all well and good when we talk about a single engagement channel, right? Getting the right content to the right person in the right context at the right time, and then measure the effectiveness. Now, as we all know, this gets a lot harder when we start to think about multiple channels. Channels that we know, and also channels that we don't know, because we just threw some example channels that you might be reaching your customers or constituents in on a regular basis. And of course, there's the usual suspects, certainly the emails, the social, the websites, of course. For some of you, call centers may be really important. That touch point with someone answering the phone might be really, really critical to you. For some of you, that interaction that happens in person at a point of sale, or maybe it's a face-to-face interaction in a physical store. For some of you, mobile is critical. I would imagine for many of you, mobile is critical. For some of you, print is still a really important channel. Advertising has always been an important channel, and for many of you, your world is very much tied to the MarTech space, so that the ads that your sales teams are running, and making sure that those create a cohesive experience with what your marketers are saying, and your sales people are saying to people on the phones and otherwise. So there's so many channels that we know about today, but even 5-10 years ago, if we were to make a list of channels, it might have looked different. We certainly weren't talking about Internet of Things or in-product type interaction points. We certainly weren't talking about voice activation systems where we're talking to our Alexas and Siris and whatnot. And so I think it's important, as we think about omnichannel, to think about, yes, we want to create consistent experiences around the systems we know about today, but we also want to prepare ourselves for an unknown future and unknown channels that are definitely coming down the pike. So let's talk about why this is such a big issue. If we were just dealing with one channel, sure, this is easy, like I said. But as you start to add on all the channels, that even just the channels we know about, you can see at the bottom here what has happened in many of your organizations. Within each channel, you start to build repositories for these building blocks. So within your web channel in particular, you might have a web content management system that is bloated with content, with data, with rules, with planning, with analytics. And that's just one single channel. And you might have the same for email, you might have the same for social, the same for your print systems. And so what happens from a user perspective is when people are interacting with your content, data, and rules and analytics and whatnot in your different channels, they're getting very different, often disjointed, inconsistent, isolated customer experiences, and that's what we want to avoid. But this is the reality of for many organizations in today's world. And so we found ourselves having the conversation over and over again with our clients who said, we're getting serious about omnichannel. Our current state is not working. How can we make some really smart decisions to position ourselves, again, both for today and in that unknown future? And so the theory, as we kind of put this down, is that there are certain building blocks that should be considered foundational services for your enterprise. And this is how we like to describe them. So, there are things like omni-channel operations that facilitate cross-team collaboration and planning. If you're a product-based company, you want to make sure that you're pulling your product data from a definitive single source of product information. Your customer data should be pulling from a single source of as well. Your journeys that you're creating should not be specific to a particular channel, but cross-channel. Your content, and this is what we'll be talking about in depth today, should be that single source of truth for reusable assets across any channel, not just for one. And then your reporting, analytics, and modeling needs to cross these channels as well. So it's just a different way of thinking of pushing down these really important foundational services or building blocks, if you will, lower in your technology stack so that you can then power your other systems and give your marketers the tools and make sure that they're pulling from a more unified set of building blocks to create those experiences that we're all trying to create. Here's just another way of looking at this, where you look at a typical tech stack, right? This is our omnichannel MarTech stack reference model that we like to use. And if we were talking about this, earlier this decade or into the mid last decade, this is what many organizations' MarTech stacks look like, where you had a bunch of channels at the top, a bunch of interaction and delivery environments, but the bulk of work was all happening by your marketers in these engagement systems, whether that's in your, like I mentioned earlier, your web content management systems, your e-commerce systems, your campaign marketing automation systems, particularly for around email, your social media publishing and engagement management as it related there. And then from a service and support side, maybe in your CRM or Salesforce apps as well. So that's how many organizations kind of left it. But as we talked about earlier, what happened was so much content became baked into these individual tools, creating some really bloated silos of content and data and rules and all those types of things. So what I'm suggesting to all of you is to think differently about your tech stack as a whole. And this is, I know this session today is normally about the content side, about DAM, and we'll certainly get to that. But this is a phenomenon that's, this omnichannel phenomenon is one that is very much impacting your stack as a whole. So I think it's important to, I know we have many content-focused people on the call today, but your peers who are looking at data and your peers who are looking at decisioning across your enterprise, you all should be thinking about this in a similar way, because you all should be thinking about how do we decouple these core building blocks from our channel specific applications, push them lower in our stack, and create a set of foundational services that we can all pull from. So let's dig into this from a digital asset management perspective. One of the first things that I think many organizations who are thinking about doing things differently in a more omni-channel way is they're realizing that they need to kind of rethink how they think about digital assets. They need to think bigger. So if traditionally we've thought about DAM as a repository for images, video, and audio, and rich media and brand assets that fell into those categories, many organizations are saying, okay, that's all well and good, but what about other kind of assets that we have? What about text and copy? Traditionally a lot of that lived in that web content management system, but we want to be able to use stuff on the web and in other applications and in print, those same text blocks and text chunks and text snippets. What about things like offers? What about things like documents or micro documents or micro experiences? Micro experiences is one that I think is really fascinating, where a micro experience to me is a combination of some text, some assets, maybe even some code, some HTML or something that creates an experience that someone can engage with you in the channel of their choice. What if you could manage that as a discrete asset, right? So that you could use those in multiple spots. So this kind of shift in mindset of thinking bigger than just traditional DAM is really getting people to think, you know, do we have the technology in place to handle this bigger definition of content in asset management as a whole? And so what does that mean for that tech stack? So this is kind of that idealized creative to channel flow as it relates to assets. And this is a very real way that companies that we're working with are reshifting things. So they're thinking about, if you start from the bottom up on this chart here, you can see, you have your creative and marketing ops. Now that's a loaded box, and there's a lot of different technologies that can fall into that green box at the bottom. But think about it. That's where your resource management, your project management, your scheduling, your coordination all typically happens. That leads to the production of assets through likely some ad hoc and some more stricter workflows, leading those assets to flow into a digital asset management system. At some point, those assets in your DAM get mixed with some data potentially, and those components fueled with data often live in something we call a platform that provides some omnichannel content services that can be picked up by these other engagement services above it. Now that's a kind of, I want to stress here, this is an idealized way of thinking. I think this is kind of the theory behind it all. In reality, we're seeing a number of organizations, try to find a system that's going to answer both of the omni-channel content services challenge and the DAM challenge in one particular technology, right? And they're having, quite frankly, they're having varying levels of success there. Part of the challenge is there's a lot of different vendors who want to fill that gap for you, right? And we're calling it an omni-channel content platform. Other vendors are calling it sort of this Uber content hub, if you will, that can fill that space for you. But the interesting thing, we see vendors from a variety of different marketplaces all trying to converge upon this area to try to be your omnichannel content platform vendor. Certainly there's web content management vendors, particularly some of the headless web content management vendors, who are really seeing this as a way that they can carve off more MarTech stack share, if you will, in your organization. We've even seen marketing operations vendors who have, or are very much involved in that lower planning stages say, hey, we can gobble up some more MarTech stack share as well by moving up that stack and taking on more content management capabilities right into our tools. You have a bunch of CRM tools or CRM vendors who say, hey, this is an area that we can get into as well. And of course, DAM. The DAM vendors are not all, but many are telling a really powerful story around omnichannel content services and management at that level. And we've been following this for some time, and we think this is a kind of a tough nut to crack for many of these vendors, but. And I don't know who's going to ultimately win out here, but from where I sit today, I feel like the DAM vendors are a little bit further ahead than their peers in some of these other areas, particularly because the DAM vendors have always, or traditionally from their ground up, built their systems to support images and media as first-class objects, right? And many of the DAM vendors did so in a way that allowed for some really sophisticated relationships between marketing assets, right? So there's sophisticated parent-child and even sibling relationships that we managed in the system. Some of these other tools come from a history of a very hierarchical structure that just don't lend itself to a real complicated object model as is necessary to truly provide this kind of omnichannel content services that we're describing. So we'll see there. But what this all means for all of you who are thinking about DAM technology is that this whole evolution is placing some stress on the DAM marketplace. There are some vendors on the complex side of the market that are kind of pushing the envelope in this area and have kind of led the way here. And as such, they force their competitors in the mid-range section to say, hey, we want to be your omnichannel content platform, so let's modify our tools to go in that direction. Quite frankly, some, because of this, have realized that their systems were not capable of getting there, so they actually had to take a pause and rewrite a lot of their subsystems from the ground up. And there's several vendors on this list who just, quite frankly, just started over. You know, they've been around for a long time, but they rewrote their code base to be able to accomplish some of these more sophisticated scenarios that we're talking about. And likewise, I think we're even seeing a trend in the simpler space from some of these vendors over here who are saying, maybe not to at the scale that we're talking about on the left side, but some of the vendors are saying, well, even our smaller, more targeted engagements are seeing a need to think bigger than traditional DAM. And so this is definitely having an impact across the board. This is a graphic that I use quite a bit, and some of you might have seen me talking about this on other webinars. If you haven't, there's other webinars that really get into this in detail, but I like to bring it up again because I think there's a logical transition, a logical phasing, if you will, as DAM owners today, right? I think many organizations start out in a DAM 1.0 world and they move up to a 2.0 world, and ultimately what we're talking about in a true omnichannel world is something that we label 3.0 or 4.0, as we'll come to see. But the point here is that this is a journey, right? And if your ambitions are to get to a 3.0 world, it's incumbent on you to have a vendor that can get you there. So as a starting point, I always work when I'm working with clients is to try to assess where are you on this journey and where do you want to go? You know, do you have ambitions to get to 3.0 or beyond? Some don't. I think many of you are probably in the 2.0 world, and maybe that's all you need. But I'd venture to guess that many of you are thinking about a 3.0 and beyond world. And the thing that I always like to then really dig into is, if that's where you want to be, do you have the DAM who can get you there? And like I said earlier, not all DAMs are focused on this. Many are, and many have a ways to go. Many are really pushing their product roadmaps to go in that direction, and others are years away from getting there. So this is something you're going to have to evaluate very, very closely. So how do we make sure that you have the right vendor? Well, we like to say that you need to apply design thinking principles to your tech selection. I think many organizations can get into trouble in today's day and age, especially when selecting new technology, by doing it the old traditional way. And by the old traditional way, I mean the old traditional laundry list of requirements, throw it into an RFP, get a bunch of our RFPs back, try to make some sense out of that, and maybe do some proof of concept testing, and then make a decision. We've all been through that. That can be a very painful process. And so I'm going to suggest some ideas, some best practices today, to just give you some quick takeaways as to how we can make sure that the vendors that you're looking at have these omni-channel ambitions that align with your own. And so we like to call this a bit of a down select funnel, you know, where you have so many options at the beginning, and we're ultimately winnowing down our options to the right fit for what it is we're trying to do. And we want to do so in a way that's business focused, team-based, empirical, iterative, and adaptive. So the first thing I want you to do is don't do those laundry list of requirement spreadsheets as a way to communicate what you need to vendors. I want you to create narrative scenarios that encompass the entire experience, not just this laundry list of features, as I mentioned, and be descriptive in how you talk about this. So describe, not prescribe a solution. Here's an example of a use case that I'm talking about, but honestly, don't even read it. It's not even that important, because everyone's use case scenarios are going to be different. So particularly when we're talking about omnichannel, what your definition of omnichannel is for your organization is going to be very different from someone else on this call. And so you want to describe what those experiences should be for your end consumers. How should they be interacting with your assets? How should they be interacting with these compound objects in one channel versus another channel, and what impact does that have to us as creators? Describe that future way of working in a way that works for you, and really communicate that to the vendor, and then the vendor can come back and say, hey, this is how our solution best solves that challenge that you described. Next is another critical point, and that is creating the right RFP and shortlist. Now, the challenge with today's day and age, as it has been for quite some time in the down marketplace, is the down marketplace is crowded and noisy. There's a lot of options out here, and this is not even, not even close to all the different down technologies in the marketplace today. There are new vendors entering the market all the time. We think these are some of the most significant in the marketplace, but there's a lot of noise, a lot of vendors who are saying that they can solve these challenges for you, both vendors that we call dams, but also, as I said earlier, other vendors and other adjacent marketplaces that are trying to encroach in this area as well. So as buyers, this is challenging. One of the things that we see people get in trouble, one of the ways we see people get in trouble quite often is that they try to find a shortcut to this process. They try to find a way to say, give me a single snapshot view. Who's the best in this space, and who are the best vendors out there? And our message has always been that there are no best vendors, but there is a best vendor for you. And so the way that we think that you should try to go about sussing out who the best vendor for you is that I want you to self-assess what it is that you're trying to do. Now, we come up with about 13 canonical scenarios that we think these types of systems are fundamentally built to solve. We have 5 broad categories here: brand management, marketing asset management, enterprise asset management, publishing, and video and audio management. And there's some crossover and overlap here, but if you can tell me the short list of things that you're trying to do here, I then want you to go find the vendors that were fundamentally built to solve these scenarios that are described here. And the way we work with our customers on this is we take what you tell us are most important to you. We ask you to give some weightings to that, and then we match those up against the ratings that we've evaluated these vendors on. Those strengths and weaknesses that Scott talked about when we kicked off today. We play matchmaker there, and we think that if you align your use cases, your most important scenarios to what the vendor's fundamental strengths are, that's going to give you a custom shortlist that is fundamentally suited to your needs, as opposed to that single snapshot view of the marketplace that just doesn't do anyone any good. And then from there, your work isn't over, because now I want you to go to your shortlist and really conduct realistic demos that test the vendors as to how good of a fit they truly are. So don't just come in, don't let the vendors come in and give that same standard demo that they give everyone else. It's the same canned demo that always is highlighting their latest and greatest features and functionality that may or may not be important to you. I want you to come in or force the vendors to demo those use case scenarios that we wrote. Make sure that they give you something that's truly relevant to your stakeholder team, the people who will actually be working within the system. And that's going to be a much richer experience for everyone. So demo your scenarios, do so in a way that's really allows you to compare apples to apples to apples as you go through that demo week, and it's going to be a much more meaningful use of everyone's time. And then finally, once you get through that demo week, then I want you to take that one last step of due diligence. And typically here, what we're recommending is a proof of concept at minimum, but in a perfect world, I want you to do a competitive proof of concept. Sometimes we even call this a bake-off, where again, the key here is to make this real. I want you to use real content, real people who will be working within the system, real processes, real environments, and really simulate as many of these use case scenarios in a real environment as much as you can. Now, the pushback we get here quite a bit is, isn't this super resource intensive? And it can be, absolutely. But some of the most successful selections that we've seen are the ones that truly spent the time here in getting a really good sense of what it's like to use this technology, but also getting a good sense of what it's like to work with the company behind the technology. And so what we're suggesting here is an approach that isn't all front loaded with, hey, we're going to design the system to a perfect degree and then go find that system. I want you to sketch a little bit imperfectly those use case scenarios that describe a future way of working, and then test at every step of the way to find the vendor and the technology that's the right fit for what it is you're trying to do. So that's a lot in a short period of time, but I hope that helps give you some guidance here. This omni-channel phenomenon is real. It's having real effects on people, on all of your MarTech stacks, and it's having real impact on the marketplace as a whole, particularly the DAM marketplace. And so as you look to find the right partner for you, it's going to be incumbent on you to do your due diligence and really test your vendor partner and your technology solution to find that right fit. And if you need any help doing that, we're certainly here for you. You know, we write this research with you in mind, and we're here to advise you along the way. So let us know if we can help, and I wish you all the best of luck with on your DAM journeys. And thank you all again for spending some time with me. And I look forward to having these conversations with you in the future. Thank you. Have a good day.